Welcome to Insights. This week we're putting something front and center that we've barely alluded to in previous videos, and that is the whole idea of prepping. What does God expect us to do in this area of prepping? And it is a vital thing to have thought through from the scriptures and what God is leading us to do. The executive director of Crisis Response International, a large human relief organization based on Christian principles, the executive director, Sean Malone, said that in light of his walk with the Lord and what he has believed God has showed him, there is something much more difficult coming to our nation than 9/11, much more difficult in depth, breadth, and the whole thing. So this is a vital topic to be talking about. We need to address this whole idea of prepping. Here is the number one prepping principle in the Bible. Righteousness matters. More than any physical prepping tip I could give you, the number one priority in the Bible is our walks with God. In other words, it is spiritual preparation. In Proverbs 11:4, it says that wealth is worthless in the day of God's wrath, but the righteous man or woman will be saved. It's all about being in right relationship with the living God. And we see that. We don't have to go very far into the scriptures. Genesis chapter 6, we see this in Noah. First and foremost, he is called a righteous man, and he's walking with God. That is the prepping plan. However, we do not want to miss that God also gives direction in the physical area. In other words, physical prepping is in the Bible, not as a major theme, but it's in a number of places. And I just want to highlight again out of Noah's life, and that is that God did tell him to build an ark and enough room for all the animals, and we're assuming all of the food that was necessary for Noah and his family and the animals. So we do see God telling Noah what to do before the day of wrath comes. Another passage that's interesting in this whole area is actually the last two verses of Psalm 37. And it begins this way. It says that the salvation of the righteous comes from the Lord. So let's stop right there and let's let that sink into our hearts. The salvation, or being saved, physically it's talking about, this comes from the Lord. It's not going to ultimately come from any kind of prepping plan or financial portfolio or whatever. It's got to come from the Lord. So first we need to hear from him and understand what he's saying to each of us. And at a principle level, it's the same thing, but particulars, I believe, are different for different people. But first of all, it comes from the Lord. And it says in the next phrase of that verse, it says that he is our strength in a time of trouble. Now notice this, it doesn't say that we avoid the trouble, it says he's our strength through the trouble. So for us as Christians, just to think that, well, everybody else will have some difficulties to go through, but probably not so much on my part, that is not what the scriptures teach. We actually need his strength because things are so difficult. So that's from Psalm 37, verse 39. The last verse of that psalm says this, that God delivers us and helps us, and he delivers us from the wicked because he, God, is our refuge. Just like Noah, his refuge was first in God, but God gave him the ark, and therefore he was able to live in a safe place, even through tumultuous days. So in summary, we don't want to trust in human wisdom, human efforts, whatever, but as God directs, we need to first hear what he's saying to our personal lives, to walk with him in righteousness, and then secondly, what he would have us to do in the physical prepping area. We'll see you next week on Insights.